In this video, we're going to be exploring from a few different angles if singing high notes is really that good or desirable. Are you one of those people who think that the higher someone sings, the better they are as a singer? Then welcome to your intervention. Yes, high notes can be amazing, but I see more and more people who think that high singing equals good singing. So today I'm making this video to flip the switch, do the old Uno reverse card. Make sure to watch this video till the end. I'm going to be singing a little bit to show some examples.
I'm going to approach this from a few different angles.
It's going to be interesting. Let's start out with a video that made me start thinking about this. It's called One Singer to Each Note, G2 to D7. The power. Are you ready, guys? Are you ready for some high notes? Oh, wow. Wait, are these lower than my notes? Oh, no. Can they sing lower than me? Irrelevant. Let's continue. So far, I think that this is really pleasant to listen to. The tone is really nice. It sounds good. Just listening to these notes totally out of context make you feel like warm and fuzzy. And you know, it's nice. It's nice. Feels like good music. Let's continue. Ah, that's nice. I've always been a sucker for that type of tones, the like really open. It's my favorite type of vowels. Anyway, let's continue. We're still in really nice territory here. It just sounds good, right? I love it. I love it. Beautiful. Ah, Rihanna's tone's amazing. Okay, let's continue. We're getting up there now. Now we're starting to get up to like high ranges. It's kind of like before one of the passagios right here. Just a few more notes of what I think will be kind of warm notes until we're gonna enter something interesting. I don't know if you guys are feeling it, but things are starting to get a little bit
harsh.
It's not super pleasant anymore, right? Like there's something that's changed from when we were talking earlier about, oh, this nice, this like, you know, makes me feel good, nice music, whatever. We're starting to enter some kind of like screamy territory. And mind you, this is pretty high, but you know, there's a lot of songs that go higher than this. And this is more towards what we've talked about in previous videos, like kind of like the tea kettle type sounds. It's kind of soft, but it's also just kind of like high and it's kind of lacking a real human feel to it for some reason. Because it's just this kind of disembodied high voice. Okay, that was actually pretty nice. The thing is, within any of these performances, you probably wouldn't think about it. These are the voice qualities that you're moving towards when you take things up in key. There is, of course, like a sweet spot, but this is where you're going. You're going towards these like really either harsh sounds or really what I would say just textureless sounds up top, right? This is amazing. This is Patti LaBelle. Was I crying at one of her notes in another video? In isolation, I would argue that this is not a nice sound per se. It's nice within context because you're building something, but high notes don't sound that great compared to low and kind of middle notes. That's fun because I think people still don't think that Nicole Scherzinger is like a good singer because she was part of Pussycat Dolls and all this stuff where it was really, you know, raunchy visuals and stuff, but she has crazy voice talents. Now we're in tea kettle registry.
This is so fun.
Just gonna casually turn down the volume on my headphones a little bit so I don't pull the worst faces in the world. But yeah, that's we're getting there. This is like, oh, is this a voice or is it like a synth at this point? It is really cool, but does it sound good? Let's just quickly go back, you know, listen to just in isolation.
The lower notes.
Listen to that beautiful Rihanna note. It's, I was about to say chocolatey, but that sounds almost like it has some kind of racial connotation. That's not what I mean. The note is chocolatey. You can hear it. It's chocolatey. I think everything under C5 has this like kind of sweet spotty thing where you can at least hit notes that are really round and warm and at the same time have intensity. But it's getting harder and harder the higher up you go to make it actually sound good, and it just becomes a little bit more circusy too. Let me know in the comments if you disagree, by the way. Wow. Such a long notes too. Pretty cool compilation, and I think it just highlights what we're talking about here, which is registry and melodic dynamics. That is a dynamic when it comes to range, right? This might get a little bit music nerdy. So now let's have a look at the dynamic example of range. I think Michael Jackson is a really good example at this, where he will sing things in, you know, a great key. It's pretty high. It's not too high. It's still got a little bit of warmth to it, but he will also add in these little things for flavor. You probably know where I'm going with this, but yeah, let's listen anyway. So that's that. You got a little he there, right? It does the trick because it brings in that variation. But just imagine if Michael Jackson sang the whole thing in that like he type voice. It would be really annoying. And I see a lot of people, like especially singers too, have a tendency to want to be like, yeah, I want to go as high as possible. If only I can take this song up a few more steps, it's going to sound even better. When in reality, often it doesn't. For example, someone I see getting a lot of flack, who's a great singer in my book, is Lewis Capaldi. A lot of people would claim that he's not a good singer. I think even Anthony Fontano said something about it.
Someone You Loved by Lewis Capaldi. I had never heard this song. Had to go listen to it. It's a super basic 4-chord piano song using the same goddamn formula you've heard a million times already. And then once the mediocre singing came in, it was like, oh wait, I have not heard this before. And it's basically this dude who's not that great of a singer caterwauling over this piano passage that I swear I've heard underneath dozens of tracks.
So yeah, I totally disagree with Anthony Fontano here. I think Lewis Capaldi has a really great voice. It's really warm. Some of his pronunciations are a little bit funny to me, like, oh, thing he's got going on with just like really puffy cheeks. But his voice is warm. It's got this like great distortion in the high end. I actually really like Someone You Loved. Yes, the lyrics are pretty basic, but there's a great synergy between the melody when he barks out kind of the whole, I was getting kind of used to being someone you love. There's just something so raw and emotional to that, to me, that it kind of lifts the whole song up. I'm Swedish, so I don't really listen to lyrics that closely, but what I do listen to is when a lyric truly and passionately works together with a melody. And I think he really had something there. And that's, I think, is a big part of why that song is big. Sorry, I just spilled so much water on myself. Is it even visible on the camera? Oh, I've been talking to the wrong camera for a while. Anyway, check this out. Beautiful. I'm not gonna change shirts. I'm a man. Men don't have to be pretty. Or women either, for that matter. Let's not be sexist here. One interesting example of using high notes pretty well, I think, is from the Magic Flute. The Mozart. Is it an opera? I think it's an opera. Anyway, you've heard this song before. Listen to this. That's so like impressive, and it really works. I think it works better because it doesn't have lyrics for some reason, but it's a very specific thing, right? You wouldn't listen to those notes without the musical context and be like, yeah, this sounds really good. It's a little bit like polishing a turd in a way, high notes. You have to put them into a dynamic context where the intensity and kind of actually the poor tonal quality to it adds to the experience. Like, oh, it's intense here because it doesn't actually sound great, or it sounds a little bit funky, but it's funky in like oh, it's more intense here. Wow, they're struggling. That's also led to a lot of singers, I think, faking struggling just because they know that like that's how you get across emotion more. Effortless high notes just become this like pointless thing that kind of sounds bad, at least to me. Again, let me know in the comments if you want to argue with me. I love arguing in the comments. I will call you a lot of words I can't say in the video to keep it monetized. I will get real mad down below. But now let's zoom in for a second on the positive things about high notes, which is how they can add dynamic and impact to a melody, and what happens when you take the high notes away from an interesting melody. I think Sia's Titanium is a really good example of this. In the original chorus, you got this. You shoot me down, but I won't fall. I am titanium. And then, for example, if we take that melody, which I really like, and instead of going up to those high notes, we go a little bit lower, then you can really feel the melody just falling through. You shoot me down, but I won't fall. I am titanium. Sometimes I call this the YouTube cover artist trick because I heard that so many times when covers are big on YouTube. People just like, I can't hit this high notes. I'm just gonna take it one octave down. It can pretty much kill any melody. So there's definitely value to this to add some dynamic flavor to your songs, even though the sonic quality of a high note is not as pleasant. Here's another interesting video that kind of ties into it. It's from Insider and it's called Why You Love the Sound of Falsetto. Let's have a listen.
You're the sunflower.
This was the biggest song on 2019's biggest album. Sunflower is technically a Post Malone song, but it gets some of its hookiest parts from featured artist Sway Lee, specifically his trademark falsetto.
Certain things you just can't refuse.
Sunflower had a historically long stay on the top 10 of the hip-hop R&B charts, outlasting the record set by The Weeknd's 2015 single, The Hills. If you look at these two songs, you start to notice a trend. Men singing super, super high.
That's an interesting point that I actually think that they're getting wrong in this video. I do think that falsetto sounds really good. A lot of people like falsetto, but these songs don't really go that high. What they are doing is singing in falsetto, but it's kind of within that warm range we were talking about earlier when we were watching the video with the girls singing higher and higher. And yeah, the highest note in the Sway Lee song, Sunflower, B4, which means that none of these songs actually go high. They're just sung in a way that's perceived as high. This is a very common misconception. Sometimes we talk about that in music production as kind of formants. Is that what it is? So for example, I can sing the same note like, oh, and then I can sing it in another way like, ah. And most people would probably say that the second note was higher, when in reality, it just got a lighter sound color to it, but they're exactly the same, like, tonal heights.
Falsetto is very equivalent to the female head voice. When we're in chest voice, vocal cords are making a thick and muscular kind of contact.
When you go into falsetto, though, the vocal cords stretch out and move apart from each other, so that only their edges are vibrating. In this stretched out position, your vocal cords are like the thin strings on a guitar. They can vibrate faster and therefore produce higher notes. That kind of dramatic pitch change has a big effect on us listeners.
And that's a great point. So that's what we've been talking about this whole video. Basically, that it's the changes between low and high that are interesting, but it's not the height in particular. For example, I think that you can build amazing dynamics and amazing emotional range
by just singing low,
but varying how low you are. So for example, I think Phineas is a good example of this.
Was in the pictures on my walls.
Kind of sings pretty low most of the time, but there's dynamic to it. It's mainly about establishing a baseline, right? If your baseline is that you sing like hello, 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 then suddenly if you go hello, yeah, then that can kind of be something that makes like, whoa, what happened there? This is amazing. While if you have a higher baseline, something like hello, 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 then you suddenly gotta go like, yeah, whatever, just kind of go way higher in order for it to have an emotional impact.
As humans, we primarily identify each pitch or musical note that we hear through its relation to other pitches.
This is exactly what I'm talking about. What a good video. How in line everything is. We're learning.
This ability is called relative pitch. It makes sense that large leaps in frequency really command our attention. Bach, the famous composer, used this to his advantage. He included rapid pitch fluctuations in key moments of his compositions. Pop singers do the same thing, but with their vocal melodies.
There's definitely a lot of pop music that does kind of stay in a registry, but I think it has a tendency to not do that well because it's not as interesting as other music that has more dynamic fluctuation. But there is, of course, a limit to that as well. I think you can definitely go crazy and go too hard with registry. There's only room for that many Mariah Carey whistle note songs, right? Because it feels like a gimmick at some point.
According to the music cognitive psychologist David Huron, when you hear high-pitched, loud singing, your brain releases excitatory hormones that increase your arousal state and make you more attentive.
But that would not apply to falsetto then, because falsetto is by definition quiet, like more quiet than other singing. Wouldn't it be more that when people scream, that would give you an even higher kick then?
it's bizarre.
It's weird to watch a video where they kind of contradict themselves.
So it's all about getting that striking vocal contrast. Makes sense that today's most popular music genre is reinventing falsetto by really pushing that contrast. That genre, of course, is hip-hop.
Rap going on that are feeling really tough and really grounded, and then you have a chorus that's really airy and light and sweet. It's again that wonderful contrast.
I feel like falsetto isn't used that much in hip-hop nowadays because falsetto is kind of by definition pretty lame sounding. It's not really the coolest rappers that end up using falsetto on their stuff. It's almost ironic use, I think. Maybe I'm totally wrong. Let me know in the comments.
It's impossible to predict how falsetto might be reinvented in the next next decade of pop, but one thing is clear, it's probably not going anywhere.
Classic. Interesting video. Some things I didn't necessarily agree with, but I think what it did really well was emphasizing the thing that we've been talking about in this video, which is the dynamic and how you use it for contrast. But like, they kind of contradicted themselves a lot there regarding like, are you talking about powerful high singing? Are you talking about what he was talking about in the end there, like sweet singing as contrast to like hard rapping? They kind of didn't make any sense the way they wrote this, but probably wasn't written by a musician maybe. Okay guys, click here for more music commentary videos, click here for videos where I sing or make music, and I will see you in my next video. There's definitely a room in popular music for just a bunch of
High singing and stuff.
but keep in mind that higher doesn't mean better, and keep in mind that it takes a lot of talent to sing well and make it sound good in lower registers as well. This has been your intervention. I'll see you next time.